Beep.
I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now.
All right. So today's an exciting opportunity to talk about the pre-election and everything that's gone on over the last month on the federal side of things for Canada. And I'm actually really happy to have a room full of people to have a great discussion with. But please feel free to tie in on the comment side of things. Little housekeeping on things. This is potentially one of my last live stream videos. So just because of the municipal campaign that I'm on, time what it is, I don't have a lot of time for these things, and yeah, the costs are not something that I'm willing to incur much anymore, and the rates have more than doubled. So potentially, this could be your signature. This could be our final call, and in that, I'm excited to have the guests that I have inside of this. On the campaign side of things, I got to say, running for city council has opened up a wide world of politics, and I've met some just absolutely fantastic and amazing people. I hope you follow me throughout my campaign and throughout the amazing people that I'm meeting, the businesses, the community centers. Um, Today I was out with my mentor, Eric Bouchard, MLA Eric Bouchard, Shane Wenzel, executive director for the CMSA. I'm promoting an initiative called Fields for Our Future, because I think that this is what Calgary needs. I think that this is what our generation owes to the generations upcoming. When we look at costs and expenditures for what the city's actually putting out, of course, there are cost-cutting measures that can be made, but we can't sacrifice our future generations to those cost-cutting measures. So we're looking at coming into a political situation where, a lot of us are hoping for a more conservative styled government, something that we can kind of get our hands around, our heads around for spending, so that we're not continuously building this chain of debt into future generations. And I encourage everybody to make sure that they make it out for their voting if they haven't already been one of the 7 million people that have cast their ballots early. And if you're in Calgary, I want you to come out and make sure that you get your voice heard. Civic responsibility, and it is a responsibility, is to make sure that you're engaged in the conversations, that you're somewhat knowledgeable about the people that you want to be not leading you, and this is very important, but representing you inside of your community, and to make sure that your voice gets heard through those people. So with that, I'm going to start off in introducing some of our guests here. I'm, of course, going to start ladies first. Eva Chipiuk needs no introduction inside of the conversation. Marty up north, Martin Belanger, great friend. Happy to always have him on a conversation. And James and Mike from the Critical Compass. One of the, and this can't be said loud enough, one of the independent voices that gets no funding from the Canadian dollars, that's out there to have conversations that sometimes other people don't want to have. So guys, thanks a lot for actually it was the Critical Compass that threw this together. I'm just fortunate enough to host it. So Mike and James, thanks a lot for getting us all together, finding a time that's conducive to all of us. And Oh, you know what? Actually, there's one more thing. I think that Sean Newman and Twos are doing a live stream. I hope we're not interfering with that. If we are, I am recording this. It will be posted on my Substack and through YouTube at a later time. So, I mean, tune into the channel that you want to tune into, and make sure that you come back to us if you had to leave and join Sean and Twos. They're both going to be amazing conversations, and I know that. And I just don't want to make sure. I just want to make sure that I'm not, trying to cop the audience from them. So, guys, welcome to the conversation. I don't even know where we begin with this. I mean, this has been an insane month. So let's get at it. Go ahead.
I'm gonna challenge you on that. I find that this is one of the most boring that I remember in a long time. Like, to me, the most, like, it's a 2-horse race right now, right? I mean, nobody's talking about Jagmeet or Elizabeth May. It's Pierre and Mark Carney. And they both move so close to the middle. They're like literally stealing each other's ideas and constantly. And the only thing interesting for me has been trying to figure out who's leading, but otherwise, like, no controversy, no bozo eruption, no scandals, nothing new. That's the other thing. The promises and like when I'm watching both leaders, I'll be critical of both leaders, all leaders. Nothing new. Like, I'm like, wow, we're in 2025, and people are just basically recycling really old ideas.
No scandals?
Nothing. I mean, we've had, like, compared to, I don't know, what do you think was a scandal?
I think I can relate to what Marty is saying, though, because I think what he's saying too is there's been so much build up. Like, we've been waiting for an election, a federal election, I think, for years. And then here we have 30 days into this campaign, and it's kind of like, yeah, no new big, like, explosive things coming. Like, this is where, like, that's what's gone on bad with that. We've been living this campaign for 3 to 5 years. That's how I feel, at least. Like, it's not.
It's anticlimactic, right? Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. We were robbed in a sense, because Parliament was pro-rogue. Some guy named Mark Carney was installed, chosen by 115,000 people, became the prime minister. And then we were in an election campaign. Yeah, like I'm still nervous. That said, what's that?
That's an entire scandal.
Sure, but I mean, like, I guess your definition of scandal. I mean, that's a scandal, but so's Chinese interference, so's everything else. But we're not like, nobody's talking about any of these things.
No, but we are on certain sides of things a lot more aware of what's going on, and I believe that because Elon Musk took over Twitter, X, that we're actually more privy to these conversations. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen what happened in the not the current Trump election, but we've seen what happened in the last, and seen how much information was actually not allowed to be talked about on Twitter. And I think there's a lot more of that information that's come out about Carney than we would have ever been privy to had Elon Musk not taken over Twitter. So, what we've seen in this most boring thing that we're talking about is that we literally have one candidate that was encouraging constituency or his constituents to kidnap his opponent for a ransom of $100 million or $1 million. That Mark Carney let off the hook. So I mean, that's kind of a big topic conversation that I don't think anybody has fully had yet, because we still have no idea of how many Chinese police stations are inside of Canada. We know they're still operating. We don't know who they are, where they are, and we don't know how many people are, or how many Chinese Canadians, or how many Canadians are actually have a bounty out on their head. And I mean, I think that's a big important conversation. I think that's an exciting conversation.
Well, it shows Sheldon how like what an abusive relationship Canadians have been in with their government for so long that this kind of stuff is just like, oh yeah, that's Tuesday, you know.
Well, that's it, right?
Well, and I think maybe this is the thing, like for us, especially maybe Marty, maybe more than anyone else, is he's really been like investigating a lot of these things and bringing them to light for a long time. Like we've known about the problems. The one thing I am incredibly excited and very optimistic about this election is how much interest there is. And Sheldon, you talked about this already, is civic engagement, like the turnouts already at the advanced polling. Awesome to see. The rallies that appear really is bringing in the numbers in Calgary tomorrow, in Edmonton. Most of us were there. That's on this call. Like that's amazing to see. It's really sad to say that the scandals are not or like there's nothing explosive in that way. But again, I think it's because we've been waiting for so long for us to get here, and now it's a little bit anticlimactic. But for many that haven't been paying attention, the engagement is awesome, and I love that.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, thanks for saying that, Eva. I think, I've been bringing up some of this for so long now. I guess I'm in a sort of a self-preserve mode where I don't want to bang my head against the wall anymore. Like I'm bruised, right? So I mean, ranting a little bit here, I'm almost getting like, if we lose this election, if this election goes to the Liberals, Marty up north is going to be black-pilled, and he's going to have a hard time recovering from this one. Like, if the Liberals cheat and steal an election, I'm like, it's going to be frustrating for me. So I think I'm maybe in some sort of weird self-preservation mode right now. Survival instinct has kicked in or something. Yeah. Now let's bring it back to something positive. I want to mention this to what you said about civic engagement.
Famed for his positivity, Marty up north.
Start with the black pills, then we get to the positive.
Yeah. The civic engagement. This weekend was
There's suppositories.
This weekend was advanced polling, so I went, and then I took two of my kids one day, and then I took two of the other kids the other day. And it was really awesome, like you said. At our polling station, at our voting station, the people made an effort to announce new voters. So anybody who had voted for the first time in an election, they would say, as soon as they put their ballot in the box, they would applaud and say it. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, because there was a huge crowd, and about every fourth person voting got applauded. So that tells you how young they were. Like, there was a very young crowd, and I found that cool. Super encouraging.
Yeah, nice.
So one thing to note.
Sorry, that's it. Now I'm going back to ranting.
So there is this idea that this advanced polling is just conservatives rushing out because they want change. But I was chatting with some friends and family, and some of them are more left-leaning, and they voted like last weekend in the advanced voting, even though they haven't been that engaged, and they even weren't that confident or sure. And when I was chatting with them further, it seems like, well, it was hard to decide between NDP and Liberals, because that's how they always vote.
Wow.
They didn't feel too strongly about both of them. So they felt like, well, Singh he's kind of an idiot, and they don't really know Carney, and they don't really feel too strongly about a banker, but they still vote for these parties anyways, because the Conservatives have been demonized for so long. They can't fathom supporting alt-right or whatever fascist word they will throw on the Conservatives. They can't support that. So I don't know if you've observed this with any of your kind of extended circles as well. Like, is this representative of some of the other interactions you've seen, or?
Well, I actually went door knocking a little bit because I was interested to hear what people were saying. And I live in Edmonton City Center, and it was it's really interesting here because it was conservative. Then it went Liberal to Randy, one of the Randys. And right now, I think it could go three ways.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly. Depends on the day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. over a year ago, Jagmeet was out with the NDP candidate. Over a year ago, she was announced. I think she was with the school board, so quite well known in the community. And then the Conservative candidate is Saeed Ahmed, and he went through the nomination process and, had some time to get involved here. And then the Liberal candidate was a last minute addition because Randy in the last minute said he's withdrawing. So I think this race will be very close on all three. Like, this will be a really interesting riding. And going around, I was in an area that basically I only saw Conservative and NDP, not a lot of Liberal signs in this area. Although some polls are projecting the Liberal to be the highest, I just can't see that happen here. But the issues were really immigration. Even from one guy that saw that we were with the Conservatives, he was like, no, I'm not interested in the fellow I was with. He said, well, what is your biggest concern? Well, first he did say, your guy doesn't believe in climate change and Danielle doesn't either. And it's like, okay, those are two different topics, but okay. But then he said he doesn't agree with immigration. The two people we had extended conversations with, one was a supporter of the Conservatives and one was NDP. Immigration was their top issue.
Like as in they both believed there was too much immigration.
Yes, yeah, I had to ask because I was like, what do you mean?
What direction?
Yes, exactly. And yeah, he was. Although, and I'm like, well, I think the blue one might be your best bet.
Well, that's interesting because I've knocked on a door or two over the last month.
Yeah.
On the municipal side of things, and of course, after the advanced polling over this last week, I've run into a number of people, and for this period, I've kind of laid low on door knocking and just kind of committed to delivering flyers. I mean, I need some brand recognition inside of the city of Calgary. I've never run for an election before, and it's not like I can run as a social media guy. So when I have run into people, in their yards or leaving their house or, checking their mail or whatever, the economy is the number one thing. Everybody's worried about spending. So, as I'm going out and meeting people and say, hey, listen, I'm running for city council, Calgary City Council, Ward 4. Their number one question is the economy. Are you a conservative person? Or are you a spendthrift like the Liberals? So, immigration is one of the big subjects, but a bigger subject and I want to say it's inside of the boomer population, is they want to know how much more money is being spent. That's where their number one concern is. Everybody's feeling the bite right now, and I feel it too. I mean, I'm not exempt from this. I go to the grocery store and I noticed, like I was at Safeway yesterday. 3 pieces of chicken were $21. That's $7 a breast, boneless, skinless breast. 3 pieces of chicken. Now we used to buy that, and this doesn't even go back 5 years. Is that we used to get 6 to 7 pieces of chicken, boneless, skinless breasts inside of the same package, for $20. So I mean, like, there's a 100% markup on chicken. And bar none, I mean, I'm going to say this point blank, and to be honest and frank, if I have to eat another piece of boneless, skinless chicken, I'm sure I'm going to have pin feathers growing out of my ass. Like I can't even look at boneless, skinless chicken anymore. But it used to be one of like the cheap forms of protein that we can get, and now it's do you guys go to the grocery store and just look at the prices and say, how obscene is this?
No, somebody else does that for me.
Yeah.
Hey,
I wanted to bring up
Do you know
a
who
point.
she is?
I wanted to bring up a point to what you said, Sheldon. Actually, it's interesting. Yeah, cost of living is definitely an issue. Imagine if this election was a month from now, right at the time when people were starting to receive their tax notices. Like, it's weird that people, and that's another weird phenomenon. Like, you're right. Like, by all measures, people are stressed by things are worse off now than they were in 2014. The cost of living is high, but people seem to have forgotten that. And I kind of wish that they had that sort of a jolt to remind them of that, right? I'm surprised that doing their taxes last month, these past weeks, didn't even remind people of how messed up it is. But yeah, if this election was a week from now and people were getting their tax bills that in Calgary are going up 6 or 7%, holy smokes, that would nothing controversial though. I'm still stuck on that people I'm trying to collect my thought. I was like, imagine if Jagmeet Singh or Blanchette had defeated the government back in November. Imagine that. And we went to the polls reluctantly. If we had gone to the polls in late November, December, what kind of an election would that have been? The front and center would have been, nobody would forget what had just happened for the last 9 years. No matter what, front center, if Trudeau was running against Pierre Poilievre in November, it would have been a different election. Fast forward, Trudeau's gone. He's replaced by Carney, and we got this crazy man down south called Trump, who comes in, and the amount of amnesia that created blows me away. Blows me away how much amnesia that created. And what I'm afraid of is people, if they vote Liberal and the Liberals come back in, boy, that amnesia is going to get cured, and they're going to remember how bad the last 9 years were.
Well, and that's actually a really good point, because there's a couple of things that we're looking at. Is that Poilievre has been focused for the last year on a carbon election, or a carbon tax election, which forced the Liberals to temporarily remove that on gas. So, I mean, there's a bit of a savings at the pump, which people are appreciating, but we're not seeing that on groceries. And I mean, like, here's a question that just came up. Shouldn't the price of groceries be declining if there's no carbon tax? But yet we're actually still seeing an increase on the cost of regular goods, despite the fact, thank you, Debbie, for asking the question. Shouldn't we be seeing a decrease on the cost of goods, given the fact that there's no more carbon tax? I mean,
maybe not this quickly.
You'll see it. I think you'll see it. I mean, it's there. It's definitely a component of the cost of producing foods and delivering foods and storing foods. I think there will be a grocery, but of course the retailers right now are taking advantage of this and hanging on to that little extra profit margin for a while. But supply and demand will work. I mean, I'm retired and I do groceries. Like, I'll admit it, I do groceries. I usually go with my wife. I've noticed prices have actually maybe not come down, but settled. Definitely settled. I mean, I'm paying attention to a few key items. I'm highly aware of the cost of eggs and things like that, but I do believe in supply and demand. It does work.
Yeah.
I mean, the competition works, and the prices will come down.
Well, and also we have to keep in mind too that there's an aspect of the money supply has been so expanded over the last 3-4 years that there is no like magic switch to get it to go back down as so quickly. Yeah. Like what you said, probably the most actually striking marker would be if prices just stopped increasing. That would be a huge win.
Yeah. And I do follow inflation numbers closely. There have been a lot of things that have come down. So they don't come down in prices. Actually, let me clarify that. Grocery prices probably won't come down very much. Inflation just decelerates and gets back to normal. I mean, once prices are high, they rarely come back down. But there have been things that have started to really decelerate. And it's not because of anything the government's done. It's because Canadians have no more disposable income. Like when I look at the numbers this week, like every week, the government publishes numbers on how many people cross the border and flights and stuff like that. And man, it's crashing. And then they're saying, oh, it's because of Trump, it's because of this. No. These are trends that started like a year and a half ago. People are just not traveling because they can't afford it. Yeah. And so, and then the prices start coming down, and then the whole concept of supply and demand works. But
you're looking at it from economic standpoint, and I feel like a lot of people are still stuck in a different mindset when they vote. They're thinking about what is the government's role,
Yep.
and a lot of people think, well, it's the government's role to take care of us.
Yep.
And if we're struggling, well, the government has to put in programs, let it be the childcare benefit or the school lunch program for children. They're not thinking about the economic conditions that the expansion of the money supply, how that rippled into making it unaffordable for the average person to pay for these basic things. They're thinking about, well, the government isn't doing enough to do it. If that's their mindset, then they look at the Conservatives wanting to cut certain things, and they see that as danger. They're like, well,
Totally.
we're gonna struggle because they're cutting our lifeline, but they're not thinking from first principles at this point.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
no, go ahead, Ava.
Yeah, so when you mentioned the amnesia, and I think this goes to it, where it's a very purposeful amnesia too, and the demonization from the mainstream legacy media that is constantly demonizing anything that is not the Liberal Party, really. And that's actually another thing. I guess, I think I totally agreed with Marty, and again at the beginning, because it's also anticlimactic. But there was that massive like fight that broke out during the leaders debate, and I'd like to hear your opinions on that. For me, it just was like, I wrote about that, like it was bubbling to the surface, the independent medias and the alternative.
Oh, you mean
media.
the one among the media, not among the panelists?
No,
Yeah.
among the media. But this goes to why Canadians are forgetting things, because the legacy media constantly is painting a picture, the rosy picture for Rosie is painting a rosy picture of the Liberals and demonizing everyone else. So it's a very purposeful amnesia. It's a very purposeful demonization, and they keep shutting out the voices for anyone else. And so it was no wonder it didn't surprise me that blow up happened within the media, because it was going to happen at some point. Like that was bubbling under the surface. And then it happened, and they tried to make it into this big scandal. I think the legacy media, from what I saw, I don't watch it very much, but this is the underlying issue in Canada, is people aren't getting their voices heard, and they're being suppressed all the time. And then these voices are getting frustrated. So I think maybe that's where we are and why we're seeing voter turnouts. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that too, if that's what you were thinking. Like when it happened, was it something that surprised you, or you're just like, okay, here's another day in Canadian politics?
They're still making us Conservatives out to be the fringe minority, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like that's their tactic, and I think a lot less people are biting on that apple right now. To be honest with you. We see the level of engagement inside of, when media posts something, and I'd put up, sorry, it was something that said, Canadians feel a lot safer, excuse me, than they did 10 years ago. And, when I posted this article, and I posted it on Twitter, I posted it on LinkedIn, and I posted it on Facebook, and I got a lot of people saying it's complete bullshit. And I know I'm not supposed to be using profanity inside of a campaign period here, but at the same time, it's not just my thoughts. It's what the general mindset is saying, is that they're pushing the envelope to a place where it's not even believable anymore.
Yeah.
So as much as the legacy media is defending them, it's not coming out across as being believable. And I think that's why people like the Western Standard are opening up their paywalls and saying, listen, here's what the news actually looks like.
Yeah.
View us for free, so that you can kind of get a perspective of what's going on. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, no, I want to follow up on what Ava said. Like, one of the weird, interesting things of this last 4 weeks is actually been how the left has also suddenly became critical of the mainstream media. I didn't have that on my bingo card. Remember at the beginning of the campaign when Rosie got almost viciously attacked because she questioned Carney too hard? and I found that fascinating. And then I see it online a lot. Like the left are trying to dispel or discredit articles written by the National Post or even like mainstream newspapers and stuff like that. So I think it goes to a bigger evolution. Media, the role of media in elections has changed. It's not the same as it used to be. I mean, you know, like when I look back on, say, the last Conservative defeat, it was in the same situation as this. Everybody said like it was Scheer's to win. You know, he had an empty net, but he couldn't because the media was totally against him. There's some of that verbiage now. People are saying the media is against Pierre. I agree, but there is some. It's a changing dynamic. Like look at it's a changing dynamic, not just on Twitter, elsewhere. I mean, I've actually witnessed many friends and family make comments to me, and then I literally asked them, I'm like, are you just parroting me, or are you finally getting information from somewhere else? And I'm happy to say people are finally getting information from other places. So there is a transformation. But at the end of the day, I still think the mainstream media in Canada is definitely left-leaning and helping Carney. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Oh, for sure. But the thing that I think we can maybe look forward to in the next few days here is that kind of like what you saw at when you went and did your early voting. You know, there's a huge voting block of young adults that like wouldn't dream of turning on a TV to watch news on it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what's more square than watching news on TV? So I think, and those kids, that the Gen Z voting intentions from everything we've seen over the last year strongly are leaning conservative. So I think there's a really big block that isn't being captured when we see these, you know, I don't know. I said it on the I said it on our show.
No, it's a fantastic.
The polls were fake.
No, it's a fantastic point. There's that. There's also there is a broad segment of the population that is become mistrusting of media, government, all sorts of things, and won't even say what they're thinking. Like that's really neat, right? Like I know people. Actually, one of the companies or one person I was talking to, they're trying to do polls, use a different technique to get some polling. Like they were asking, instead of asking people, who are you going to vote for? They started asking, who do you think your neighbors are going to vote for? Like twisting it around like that, because the polling companies are starting to realize that they're not getting information. The polling companies haven't adjusted to the fact that, there's been a change in overall attitudes. Yeah, you're right about the kids. I mean, my kids are your age, actually. Like I call you guys kids, but they know stuff that I don't know, and I know stuff they don't know, because we obviously get stuff from different sources. It's really cool. Yeah. And they troll me on the internet. If you're watching right now, you little peckers.
One note on legacy media is I feel like some of these messages they do.
Jeez, that looks good, Mike. Sorry to interrupt. What are you drinking? That's got a nice color to it.
This is a Old Forester. This is a kind of a low shelf American bourbon, but it's good.
Okay.
Oh,
sorry, James.
Bourbon, yeah, as they say en français.
Bourbon.
What were you saying, James? You were
yeah, no worries. The one thought on the legacy media, it does permeate through social media as well, and things do get spread. So even though certain demographic, they're not tuning in, they're not watching cable, they're not watching these kind of news, but they're still referencing CBC. They're still sharing these because they still treat them as authorities. And I even had a buddy in his 30s, and he mentions like, yeah, my next door neighbor, he's Ukrainian, but he's voting for, he's got a conservative sign. And he's like, that's strange to me because Polyev doesn't want to support Ukraine. And I said, are you kidding me? Like, this is, they all support Ukraine. Like, this is not even, I don't know where you got this idea from. So the thing about some of these lies is, or some of these notions, it doesn't need to be even true. Some of these things kind of just permeate. People get a gut reaction. And that's the thing about propaganda is they're bombarded with messages, and then
Yeah.
these little things just kind of stick, and then
The
they
whole
just believe
Poiliev
it.
thing, the whole Poiliev not getting a security clearance, that one's annoying, right? That's an example. That's
shows up.
it's been debunked so much, and it keeps showing up. Absolutely.
Him not winning his seat was the one yesterday, and it's like,
Yeah.
come on. Like
First time
it's
in
at
20 years.
91 projection for him. But one
I'm
thing
glad that you brought that up. Sorry, Eva. Just one quick thing. I responded to that liberal, like literally the Liberal Party of Canada posted that, and people were commenting on it. For anyone watching who wants to take us up on this, we posted a comment. We will front $10,000 a person who wants to bet that Poilievre will lose his seat. If you want to bet that against that Poilievre will lose his seat, we'll throw $10,000 a person that he'll maintain his seat.
Great bet.
Bunch of likes, bunch of views. No one took us up on it yet, though. So
yeah, and I like that people are calling. Now you've brought up another point. There's another. He's like he started on TikTok, but he's now on X a bit more. Mario, and he did the same thing. Because people are saying Pierre Poilievre is going to take away healthcare. And he said, I'll give $5,000 to anyone that gives me a clip of him saying that. And I think this is great to call people out on that. That's the best way to get to the misinformation. Any clip, any evidence. We're
5,000 can buy a lot of chicken. It's,
but see, here's the thing: is that the short clips, the headlines, are basically what legacy media relies on. They only rely on people reading the headline and not the entire article. So even on the article that I discussed earlier, where Canadians feel safer, the information that was provided by Ecos stated the exact opposite than what the headlines showed. And going into more of a granular level on municipal politics, because kind of that's where my head's at, is that the city council member that I'm looking to replace, who's stepping aside because he realizes he's damaged goods, Sean Chu, he was exposed for a confrontation or I don't know what it was. He ended up as he met a girl at a bar as a police officer dressed in his police uniform. She turned out to be 16. He ended up at her house. And I mean, this stuff was known 20 years ago, and it was exposed 20 years ago. However, it was brought up in the last election, in the last week of the election. And what that did is it took the contender, his next running closest, and put him within 100 votes of winning the election. So there was enough media press that actually swayed a population inside of a Ward 4, which is about 80,000 people right now, to start voting against him. So if they weren't in part of advanced pollings, that's where he was losing them, is on the people that read that media. Now, I'm going to say this, is now that I've actually been out knocking doors, I mean, my first introductory line is, listen, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Sean Chu is not running for municipal elections. He's not running for city council for Ward 4. And the number of people that say, that's really good, is phenomenal. And these are people that have been, I'm going to say, inside of the community for long periods of time, because, I've been in my community for this is coming on 33 years right now. And these people are in the community either longer than me or just shorter than me. And they don't want to see him there anymore. Now, there's a couple of things that are in play. One, he wasn't as effective because he was kind of hamstrung by the whole fiasco. Another portion of it is that, somebody that he supported inside of the last election for mayor, Jeremy Farkas, came out and made bold statements against him, where he was completely surprised and thrown off. But a big portion of it is that these communications through legacy media permeate, and then and this is a big portion of what James is saying is that even if people aren't watching the elections, they're watching for scandal, or they're listening for scandal. And when that comes up, It's hard to drum that out. I mean, if you take people that are fixated on a sexual scandal inside of politics, and they don't watch legacy media, they don't watch for the corrections in media, and that's the line they're told, that's the only thing that they're going to believe, and try and change their mind through a correction or for a media they don't even watch to begin with. And I mean, it's kind of big. Now,
but those are people on the edges, Sheldon. I mean, like there's always going to be people on the extremes that you can't. You're describing somebody who's got a very narrow lens for looking at the world. I mean,
Hey, you know what? On the narrow lens kind of thing, we have somebody that's like rapidly spamming the chat watch, and this is actually kind of funny, and we'll have some good times with this. I'm going to post his first comment, and this is fascism
watch. Let's go.
Fascism watch. Mike
That's
threw
us.
this out
That's
to me.
us.
What's
Apparently.
that?
He's watching us. That's
He's
we're
watching
the
you.
fascists.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw this up, and then we're
So-
gonna have this as an intro.
Not gonna lie, I thought this was sarcasm. I thought this guy's like being hilarious because it timed perfectly. I thought he was making a joke, like sarcastically, like ironically saying this. Like this
So
is what-
Polyev and Maple MAGA are traitors. So simple. Well, I mean, I don't know what we're traitors to.
Engagement is like being called the opposite of engaging. It's like treasonous. Like when you're talking about elected officials and voting and politics, that makes you treasonous. Apparently.
And I mean, I wouldn't even give a guy like that I wouldn't even give him 2 seconds. This is the low IQ individual. Like I mean, that's such a. If you want to get down on that subject, like Mark Carney has 3 passports. So by definition, he's in conflict of interest. I really don't care. Like, he's in conflict of interest, and yet people are idolizing the guy and holding him up as an idol who's going to save Canada. He's in conflict of interest, folks. And then by definition, so I'm speaking to this moron. By definition, Carney, who had such a high standing in companies like Brookfield and the Bank of England, and hangs out in a circle of people that are in such a high class of society, is in conflict of interest. Every rule that guy passes, if he gets elected for the next 4 years, will be throwing a bone at a friend of his, no matter how much he says he won't. He's in absolute total conflict of interest. And you got Canadians like this idiot saying that Poilievre is a traitor or MAGA. I happen to believe that making America great again is a fantastic slogan. So am I a traitor? I have 4 kids. And I've committed to this country more than anybody else. So you know what? I'm done, folks. I'm calling it off here. I'm not interested in this discussion. Sheldon, have a good day.
All right, man.
He got heated. That's hey, you know what? That's a guy with some serious pride in his country, and when he sees shit like this, that's hey, I can respect that.
What I was gonna point out is even with like, I had another friend I was chatting with who mentioned like offhand some of these claims, like, okay, Poilievre's a fascist. He's supporting like a MAGA-like, Trump-like authoritarian kind of policies, or it's the playbook. I can't remember the exact wording. And I pressed this friend on that, asking like, what do you mean by fascist, or what do you mean by this? And first of all, it always means right wing. They don't treat authoritarianism equally on all sides. That's the first thing I noticed. And I pushed back and I said, like, well, Carney's got a book that in the book, basically it's WEF and UN policies that are advocating for centralized control to solve climate and fiscal problems that are plaguing the world. It's centralization. So I said, well, is the expansion of government power, isn't that fascist? So if somebody's advocating for that, like, wouldn't you be concerned about that? And this friend said, there is nothing wrong with the expansion of government power if the expansion doesn't involve collaborating with fascist leaders. And I was like, it kind of blew my mind. I was like, you're not very well studied for history wise. Like that's it seemed to, yeah, just blew my mind. So I don't know.
Well,
These
there's
things
the
aren't well defined.
no, but fascism is pretty well defined, and it's it's one of the hallmarks of a fascist government is one that works in tandem with private enterprise to exert control over its populace. Like this is the, I think that's even like Mussolini's definition of what fascism does. So, what would you call a guy who spent his entire adult life in the banking industry now trying to exert power in politics? Like, why wouldn't that be the one that triggers your like, ooh, does this maybe smell of fascism a little bit? Even though, of course, none of these people truly are, but like, I don't know. We live in a time where like nothing can be nuanced and everything has to be like early 20th century, you know, the most extreme of the left or the right. Nothing can exist in the kind of the middle.
Well, but see, here's a big problem: is political speak. I mean, as much as we, myself and Eva, want to encourage engagement inside of our communities, there's so much political speak that comes out that you're not sure, or a lot of people aren't sure the nuances that are behind these things. So, I mean, we look at things like compassionate care for addiction. I mean, who doesn't want to be compassionate towards addicts? But when that compassionate care has costed 50,000 Canadian lives, you have to sit back and at least for a moment and say, is this really compassionate? But it's the way that they nuance the verbiage that goes inside of these campaigns, inside of this politispeak, that really confuses people, because they only want, again, the headlines. They don't want to read the reports as to how things are going. So we get lost inside of these conversations, and when you try to explain to somebody, well, what does that actually mean? And this is what it does mean. Compassionate care for addicts is giving them more drugs so that they can hang out downtown and go into these these states, and then when they come out of these states, they go into another state that's really not safe for the public. But I mean, even before it gets to that point, do you want to be around that person? And if you can engage in the conversation and then try and walk them through the political speak, but I mean, like, this has to be done conversation at a time versus headline at a time. When you say 50,000 people have died from drug addiction, and then somebody says, yeah, but we want compassionate care to extend from coast to coast to coast. 50,000 people died. Who doesn't want compassionate care from coast to coast to coast? And that's how they win the arguments. It's all in political speak. It's not in the actual definitions. It's not when what they actually want to achieve.
Eva, did you hear anything about that during your, like, when you were door knocking downtown, specifically because what a shithole downtown has become lately?
Well, where I was, we were a bit north of downtown, because the city, well, all these ridings are so big. Like, I can't even believe it, where I see how far I see the signs extending. But this was like north of downtown a bit. So north of Nate even. So like a residential community, older homes. And so it was really interesting. Like I said, it was like 50-50 conservative and NDP. And I really wanted to go around and that's just to hear what people were saying, what their concerns are, because it's one thing to hear them online and then one thing to hear them in real life. But that's one thing I wanted to add to something Marty was saying. He said, I forgot what he said. It was maybe the misinformation, but what I feel people are doing too with maybe not lending their voices right now is the fear. I that was what I captured too, going door knocking, is they're fearful of the public health, for example, being removed. They're fearful of immigrant. They're fearful of this. They're fearful of speaking their mind. And this is not a good place for Canadians to be in. And I think that's something we have to start just even having as a topic of conversation. If people in Canada feel they can't speak their mind and can't talk about politics and express their views, we're already in a really bad place.
It's one thing I noticed from the rally in Nisku was how positive, how well worded, and how positive Polyev was.
Yeah.
And let it be the people that came before him that introduced him. Just he didn't spend a lot of time in the doom and gloom. And that's a stark contrast to what the media is portraying Polyev as right now. Because they'll say like he is the fear mongering, like all he's running on is fear. Canada's not broken. He's running on fear. And then you look at Carney talking about, well, half of Carney's speeches are Trump this, Trump that. And it's leaning more into the fear than what I saw at the Polyev rally. So I was a little bit surprised at that dichotomy.
Yeah, there seems to be this like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't if you're a conservative, because anytime you're complaining about a policy that exists that was maybe instituted by somebody slightly to the left of you, well, now you're being negative and you're being everything is all doom and gloom, and then if you're proposing a policy that doesn't have the same sort of warm fuzzies that liberal policies do, well, then you're damned again, because it's not it doesn't have the same sort of, like, you just can't win because it's a I don't know, I feel like conservatism, at least nowadays, feels like it's always, and maybe you guys can have an opinion on this that's more nuanced than this, but it feels like we're always kind of reacting to like liberals just do shit and then we have to react to it and like pick it up after and like, nah, we should kind of redirect it. It's not, the conservatives haven't been leading the conversation and leading the policy decisions in quite a while, so I can kind of get why maybe that's we get associated with that.
How I would say it is, I don't think they own it. And I think that maybe, like, I have a really hard time with labels in general, but to say conservative, because what was conservative 10 years ago is different to now. So that's just one thing. But I feel like if Pierre Poilievre said Canada was broken or things in Canada were broken, I think he should own it. And he didn't. Explain why you said that, because if you actually explain it, people will come to understand it. It's not hard. Look around. Things in Canada are broken. It shouldn't take 2 months or an undetermined amount of time to get a passport in Canada. And I'm using a federal issue for federal politics. When I was standing in line to get my passport, there was a couple from Spain right in front of me. And they said that you literally go in Spain and you get it within half an hour. Like, that's what we should be aiming for in Canada. So for him to identify problems because he's been around for so long, he couldn't talk about what they are. And maybe this is my biggest frustration with Pierre, I think, and the Conservative Party, is that they don't own anything. They start and then they shy away. Started at the Freedom Convoy and continues it. And Pierre is so well spoken, so well versed in these things. He should, and I wrote this today, take on challenging podcasters. Like, it's great to see him with, the few that he just did recently. There was a nice conversation. But Pierre is in a position after his 100 years of being in politics that they always shame him for. He can speak to literally all the issues that people throw at him. His discussion with Peterson, I really enjoyed, because it was on such an intellectual level and he challenged him there, not really on the political level, but you really got to see him heated and like, defending what he believed in. And you don't see that a lot. Like, he could have done a number of the conservative type podcasters that challenge him a bit more, or even more PPC leaning. I think he would do great on those, and none of that. Like, they just don't own it. And that's, we're in a time that just, it's not, you can't say one thing and step away. And I think that everyone's tired of that from their leaders. We've seen that a lot.
Well, a big portion of that is that, as a true conservative value, is that we do believe in freedom of speech. Which means while we are trying to exercise and encourage the freedom of speech, we don't exercise those same values ourselves. So we allow others to say what they need to say, how they're feeling, right, wrong, or indifferent, and then back away from the conversations, which is exactly what you're saying, Eva. See, and I, again, this is coming from my own political side of things, in what I'm doing, trying to work for in a municipal election, is that I'm not afraid of conversations. If that's the conversation that you want to have, let's have that conversation. Now, I don't have to be engaged in every conversation that somebody throws at me, and I definitely don't have to reply to every troll. And, obviously, Marty took a bit of an offense to Fascism Watch. Was even offended by the fact that I posted the comment, and he's come out in Twitter and voiced that in our direct messaging. Where I'd prefer to let people like this, die in their own little trolley world. But at the same time, when somebody comes up with something this fucking stupid, why wouldn't you have a conversation? Why wouldn't you expose people for their absolute gross ignorance and lack of intelligence on these things? I don't know if your camera froze ever, if you fell asleep. You were paused there for a second.
It could. Even though I'm right in downtown Edmonton, my internet is not very good.
No, so I mean, these are the things that we're forced with. I mean, again, the battle is we want to, by conservative values, encourage engagement and the freedom of speech against a party that has not only wanted to crush freedom of speech, but has worked to legislate freedom of speech by their definition of what we're allowed to talk about, by their definition of misinformation and disinformation inside of these conversations. Now, they were able to do this inside of Twitter when Jack owned the house, but they're not able to do that with Elon, and that's why there's this new legislation that's kind of introduced and talked about. We're going to talk. We're not going to have your conversations. We're going to shut you down, and you don't get to have them anymore because we decide what's true, and you don't get to talk about it anymore online, which means you can't spread this thing. So I mean, it's a lopsided battle, and I really don't know what the solution is. How do you stick to with true conservative values on people's? Let's not even go with God-given rights. Let's go with equal rights. On sure, you should have a voice inside of a conversation, while the people that you're having that conversation with are fighting to shut down your conversation, fighting to shut down your voice. How do we do that? Where's the equality in that?
Well, there isn't, and that's the reason I said that I have been disappointed with the Conservative Party this whole time, is that they have to represent everyone. And when somebody was being painted as an undesirable or a fringe minority, first they came out strong and then they retracted. Everyone deserves a voice. And I'm so tired of this from all political stripes, is that they're not willing to engage with everyone. They take on their own social causes and they're social warriors for themselves and not for the people. You see people protesting, and then I hear all of them say, I condemn those protesters that had those awful signs. Go to talk to them. They are your constituents. Because what are you saying by making that statement? You're exiling them from society. You don't want, like, I don't even understand how an elected representative is able to make those statements and say, I condemn that. If it's something worth condemning, there's criminal sanctions and criminal charges. Like, that's the only time that elected officials should be condemning something, if it's gone past it's no longer legal. Like, it's actually in the criminal code. If somebody is just expressing their view that is a little undesirable or a little bit off color, go talk to them, listen to them, ask them why they're standing here picketing and protesting. That is literally your job. And that's what I'm the most disappointed on about elected officials, all stripes, all levels. That needs
And you
to
know
stop.
what? I think part of that is it's an unfortunate reaction to how they've been trained by how our media reacts to these sort of things, where they're always in the mindset of wanting to get ahead of the story. Like, I don't want to be associated with this. This happened near my
Yeah,
rally, whatever.
terrible.
Whereas the actual response should be, why does this person feel this way? Why have they why are
Yes.
they so passionate about it that they're gonna out themselves as, as a person in public with their face, behind this message? Like, that's somebody that you want to understand why they feel that way. And so
Yeah.
maybe even if you don't change their mind on it, at least you don't like further antagonize them into falling even deeper down a rabbit hole that they're just going to destroy themselves,
Yeah.
and potentially people around them.
Yep. Exactly.
As a leader, you mentioned like being stuck in this kind of reaction mode where you take a step back and you don't have any firm stances, you don't own it. And I believe the solution is to call out when games are being played. So if there's guilt by association, you call it out for what it is and you point out that method of demonization. So like you don't have to play the game. You can help bring that awareness of the games that are being played. And I feel like part of that comes from just having a backbone, calling it as it is. And I feel like you would gain, if you can accurately call these things out, you gain a lot of support for the people who
Yeah.
feel like they do not have a voice and have not had a voice.
Yeah, totally agree. And like I was saying too, Pierre's in such a good position to have those conversations because he's so well rounded and been around. Like, I can't imagine Carney in a conversation with somebody challenging him. He would snap, I think. He did already when Rosie asked him one question. Look inside yourself.
Well, he's
Rosie.
done that multiple of times.
Yeah.
In that, he's only going to take the questions that he wants. And I mean, even like Jagmeet Singh, when he refused to answer questions from Rebel Media.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect example of, no, you don't get to choose the conversations that you're having inside of Canada. And I mean, like, one of the questions that was asked to him was about the burning of 200 churches inside of Canada, inside of the same time that they're talking about, their political beliefs and being quashed. And it's like, well, okay, so if you want to have that conversation, let's have an equal conversation.
Yeah.
200 churches have been burned. What's your position on that? Well, I'm not going to take that. Well, so then, I mean, and a big conversation that Corey Morgan likes to have is on the Indigenous side of things, where, the conversations are, you must believe in residential schools, and nobody doubts that residential schools happened. We just, have some concerns over the information that's being provided. You've been given tens of millions of dollars. You haven't dug up a single grave, and if you have, it's been inside of a literal grave site. So, I mean, let's have the honest conversations inside of these things. The problem with media and the problem with government is that we're only allowed to have the conversations that they want to have, and we're only allowed to support the narrative that they want to support. We're not allowed to have actual discussions. So, I mean, like, break it down into something like fluoride in the water systems. There was never two sides of the conversation presented inside of Calgary for people to vote on in the last plebiscite, which was during the last municipal election. There was only the favored side. Calgarians were never presented with the information on an equal level. So, I mean, like, you couldn't look at the two sides of the conversation and say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And I mean, we can extend that through vaccinations. We can extend that through the entire COVID period on lockdowns, on keeping children outside of schools. Like, there's a lot of these things where we're told this is what the rule is. This is what the law is. These are what the experts say.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that there is experts, air quotes, but we're never told about the other side of the conversation. We're never told about the contravening. There's only one side of the conversation that's presented. And that's a really wrong way for media to approach these things. Media is supposed to be the advocate. Media is supposed to test these things inside of the political landscape, especially inside the political landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it for you? and you'll know this probably better than the rest of us, Eva, is if you encouraged a population to get a vaccination that nobody actually required, that didn't actually stop transmission of a virus that it was supposed to, where people got injured. I mean, as a political official, as a political figure, as an air quote expert, like, where do you sit inside of the political landscape? Where do you sit inside of the media if the media is not there to continuously prop you up? I mean, there should be people burning walking out with pitchforks and torches, exposing you as a fraud. Yeah. And we've seen the last 5 years of this absolute insanity going on. My vaccine won't work unless you have the vaccine, you horrible person. People bought on this apple. We lost an election. We had 4 more years of liberal deceit.
Sheldon, are you familiar? Sorry to interrupt your thought. Are you familiar with a term called the Overton window? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. People keep throwing that at me, and I've familiarized myself with that. Yeah.
Well, that's
but go on.
I think that's what you're describing. Is that there's like there's a range of acceptable opinions that we're allowed to have in polite discourse, and if you stray too far the other one way or another, you're immediately branded as a quack or a conspiracy theorist or something. But that may not necessarily be true, because I mean, you look at, like you were saying, you look at what people were saying. A lot of people on our side of the political aisle, if you want to call it that, everything, I mean, pretty much everything that we were saying 4 or 5 years ago, that we were being, banned off of social media for, or, being, losing entire friend or family groups because of it. I mean, like, a lot of it came true. Our initial instincts were right on a lot of it, but because that Overton window was so narrow, we weren't allowed to have a real debate about it. I mean, Eva, you're probably more familiar with this than any of us right now.
Well, not so much the concept of the Overton window, but for accountability, it's going to take time, and the government has been really good at not being found liable for harms that have caused, because their arguments in court are that they're doing their best for the good of the people, and when they make an oopsie, it was an honest oopsie. In this case, we've talked about the class actions I'm involved with in great length, and I think that we're going to be ultimately successful, because in this case, unlike any other case we've seen before, is they can approve products in Canada, sure, no problem, but here there was an additional element of coercion. But it's, first of all, people need to come to terms. Like, a lot of people didn't realize they were being coerced when they thought that they were doing what is good for society. And then, okay, now it's starting to feel a little bit weird. And then we started to hate our neighbors. And then we were, civil liberties were being taken away. So a lot happened in a short amount of time. And I think maybe that goes back to the conversation we were having at the beginning, is we've just been going through so much. And I think, Mike, even you said it's been an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And we're just like, taking a breath and letting kind of things play out, almost, even, because it's like a lot has happened over these last 5 years. So I think ultimately there's going to be some accountability. I think it's going to take time. I also think that it demands Canadians to be civically engaged. And that's why I harp on it so much, because when you turn to the legal, like looking for accountability through courts, it's going to take so much longer. That's not the place for these things. In this case, yeah, because harms actually happened, some serious harms happened. But these are political issues, and we can affect change quickly if we're on it, if we're organized, if we're educated, and all those things. You don't have to sit around wondering, what can I do as a citizen? There's so much we can do. So that's always why I'm harping on it.
Yeah, but how do we get that information into everybody's hands? That's the biggest point.
It's about getting involved, or
Oh no, it's about, and again, this boils down to what the actual conversation is. If we're presented with both sides of the story, people will have the ability to make the decision. I don't think that people are stupid, but I think people are trained.
I think it's that you, like, if it's an issue you're passionate about, you have to be your own advocate. You have to learn about it. Like you mentioned fluoride, for example. It's not something I totally agree and believe in the issue, but it's not something I've personally dedicated my time to. But people need to do that. People need to take ownership of these issues, educate themselves on it, rally people around it, and then voice their concerns to the elected officials. The exact same way the trans community did it to advocate for the rights that they now have. It's the same thing. It's just take on the issue you believe in, educate yourself, educate others, and make your voice heard. And I think all of this is possible. It just takes time and effort.
And that's a big part of the point. And sorry to cut you off, guys. Is like I look at what we have for media, and I look at the number of people that have become unplugged. They don't even watch the news. They don't have a cable system inside of their house. They watch everything via streaming because their kids are watching YouTube videos. They're watching Netflix or Disney or Crave. And so when they see something flash in front of their screen, they're told a narrative. They believe the narrative. And who has the time? Now, I'm going to use my kids as an example. I've got my grandson that's involved in 3 different sports right now. He's in hockey, he's in football, and he's in soccer. My youngest son, they just had a baby a couple of months ago, so they're dealing with that while they're dealing with a 10-year-old that is in school, that has obligations, that's inside of multiple sports. My son's trying to work his job. My daughter-in-law is working with their infant. What sort of time do you think the average individual has to commit to doing the research and coming up with their side of things? We can't go off of the feels here because that ain't working. And that's
so true.
doing.
That's such a good point, because it's like, we've talked about this before, where it's like, if you're a liberal college student in the city, all you've got is time on your hands to go to protests and make signs for whatever, and like stop traffic and do all sorts of disruptive shit, right? But if you've got a 9 to 5, or if you got a family, or like, yeah, where are you finding this time? You're doing stuff in the world.
Yeah, and I would agree, but I don't think that's the case anymore. First is, nothing is more important, because you have to participate in your democracy. Otherwise, it's not a democracy. Then it's authoritarian. Second, we waste so much of our time. Like how many times are we like, okay, let's just watch one Netflix show, and then you like binge watch 5, and it's like 6 hours later. So there is I see people on Twitter so much.
Stop adding me right now.
Please just come to a meeting at a grassroots level, because there's not so many people coming to these meetings. And I got James and Mike to come here in Edmonton, and it's like the average age is over 60. This is not good. Like, we need to put the time into it if we want to see our democracy succeed. It takes effort.
So I was gonna say that kind of circles back to this idea of personal responsibility when it comes to health. But
Yeah.
like, first of all, you focus on yourself and you're like, well, I want to make myself the healthiest that I can be. And it's my responsibility to control what goes in my body. And then from there, you're like, okay, well, if you get yourself figured out that way, you expand that circle and you look at your family and you're like, well, I want them to do I want them to do well. I want them to be happy and healthy. And you go one circle out every time. But I feel like that applies to the information landscape, and it could be on a specific issue, but it could also be on the election and these kind of these either misquotes or some of these false things that pop up. We need to still like be informed enough that we can have conversations with friends and family, but we also can't just lose our minds and just get into arguments. When people get emotional and the temperature just rises in a conversation, I've seen family members go at it where both of them leave dug into their positions and they're not anywhere closer to understanding where the other person came from. And I've had the best success, and I don't even know how to measure this success, but just for throwing out little nuggets or pointing to something in a hands-off way and helping to plant these seeds in a way that it's actually going to be received. It's more likely to be received, and it's more likely to actually help push against some of those deeply seated biases. So that's just something where I've been trying to approach that, and I'm wondering if we all just started with ourselves in our immediate circles, what amount of change would be able to happen that way.
Yeah, see, Sheldon, it's easy. All you have to do is have the patience of James and the energy of Eva, and then we could just solve all these problems. But unfortunately, guys like you and me exist. So
The wisdom of Job. No, they're all ideal situations, but I mean, we've come into, excuse me, the age of information, and the problem with that is the information that we are being fed, and much as none of us like the words misinformation and disinformation, is the people that prop up those words the most are the people that are actually feeding us the misinformation and disinformation. And in some cases, it's blatantly obvious. But again, when it comes down to it, who's got the time? Who can do the research? I mean, a big part of my platform on side of social media has come from breaking down statistics, not because I'm a rocket scientist or a PhD statistician, is because I could look at a little simple math. And I'm not talking, graphs and design. I'm talking about literally addition and subtraction, where people could look at things. They knew things weren't going right. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know how to express it. And I was able to break that down because I'm I don't put myself ahead as a hyper intelligent person that's trying to dictate anybody's life. I just kept saying, this is what the math actually says, and here's how I've kind of come to this math. And when you can make sense to people, but I mean, that was a very extreme situation inside of COVID. Right now, we're inside of a time where people are focused on their finances, and the conversation that we had earlier, where if you go to Safeway, you're paying the same price for 3 pieces of chicken as you did for 7 5 years ago. And there was even a comment that was posted earlier on what we just learned right now. There was a dude arrested in Lethbridge today or yesterday, sometime in the last couple of days, for selling eggs that he hadn't inspected. So they're perfectly good quality eggs. I mean, we're not talking the unpasteurized milk conversation. That's a whole other ball of wax that we're not going to get into right now. But he had his eggs inspected, but he sold more than he was allowed to sell, and they arrested him. Now, right now, inside of the province, inside of the country, inside of most cities, we're living through something that's called an affordability crisis. And there has been a quarter of Canadians that are living with food insecurity. And food insecurity was basically defined as is people that have to skip meals. They can't afford to eat so that they can pay their other bills. And I mean, that's a whole big conversation, but people are skipping meals. The price of eggs over the last 5 years has doubled. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. Meanwhile, a dude that has inspected eggs, nothing wrong with them, was selling them outside of his allotted quota. So we have suppression of government that's busting down on some dude selling his eggs so that he can pay his bills, so that other Canadians can eat affordable eggs. And I'm going to go on a small rant about eggs. Eggs are about the closest to a perfect food that you can actually consume. High in nutrients, high in vitamin D, high in fats, healthy fats, high in amino acids. They support your immune system. They support your muscles. They support growth. They support your brain function, activity, and maintenance. The perfect food. We have a government that's suppressing eggs while we're overlooking the issues with people dealing meth inside of the streets. How the fuck does this happen? And I mean, I can get really passionate about this conversation, and I realize that it's
fucking love eggs
probably
too,
not
man.
good for my campaign, using the profanity and all that. But seriously, like, we come to a place in society where we'll watch people committing a horrendous crime walking out on bail. And I broke this down again today inside of a tweet on my campaign account. My inside voice on Twitter. I am two people. I have my inside voice, and that's my campaign account. I have my outside voice, and that's my main account. And I broke it down on my inside voice, and then kind of fed this through my outside voice, because I have the bigger following on that. But it's the same thing. I met up with a small business inside of my community, and they got robbed 3 days back to back. Like let's call it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know what the actual days were, but they got robbed 3 consecutive days in a row by the same guy. 2 of those days, and let's call them Monday, Tuesday, this guy was arrested by Calgary Police Services and still showed up the following day to rob the exact same location the next day. Now we're arresting a guy that's contributing support with one of the healthiest food items on the planet that's ever been known to exist in the existence of humanity, eggs. We're arresting this guy. We're allowing another guy to go out and rob businesses where you and I are going to pay premium on the products that they sell, because they still have to make margin. We're letting the criminals go, and we're arresting the guy that's working on trying to keep his legitimate business open, providing a helpful food quality. This is inside of the province of Alberta. We're looking at, the big conversation of separation. How about let's start looking at fucking logic, because it's completely eluded us on all levels of government, and that's municipal, provincial, and federal. This is fucking insanity.
Yeah, we are seeing the inverse of what should happen in many domains. And the egg quota, like, you can extend that circle, like you can extend that to some of these other kind of, let it be the beef or dairy cartel, these things that kind of mess with the supply and demand of everything. But I was pleased to see Pierre specifically in his rallies. He's been pretty good for pointing out the repeat offenders, as well as kind of the catch and release policies. He hasn't shied away from that. I feel like that was a strong point of some of his messaging. And right now, I feel like with this election and with what's unfolding, we've got to take little wins and we've got to take little steps and we still have to call out every single politician and keep everybody accountable for what they do and do not do, and keep them, like, hold them to their words. And I know, Eva, you're all about accountability, especially on your podcast, and you're great when it comes to that side of things. So I don't know. I feel like we may not get all the wins that we want right away. And it may push things in different directions, but I feel like there are some potential little wins we've got to recognize along the way. So,
And actually, if I could just sorry, Eva, just quickly. Sorry, Sheldon. James, I don't know if Eva has to go too, but James and I have to head out at around 8:30 here. Can you give us a second to just plug our socials, and then we'll dip?
Go hard, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. But what I was going to say, you go first because I just lost the thought.
All right. Yeah, thanks for man, Sheldon, thanks as always for hosting us. I know, we have a kind of a group chat going, but we super appreciate you always hosting us on your channel. You got such a good reach, and it's really it's just really nice for us to be able to do this. So appreciate it. We're on X at the Crit Comp. We're on YouTube and Rumble at The Critical Compass. We're on Spotify now. We try to put our full episodes on Spotify. And anything, James?
Well, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate every time we dive into these kind of things, I feel like we explore things that I didn't fully think about, and I love having such good minds to bounce these ideas off of.
No, and sorry to cut you off, Eva, because I know you got to go too. I do want to take some time and again to plug you guys. So you can look at them as the Critical Compass. If you Google them, you'll find them on X and throughout their other social media. They're great guys. They're trying to engage in the right conversations, and I mean they're independent, which means we don't have millions of dollars of federal funding or provincial or local funding. They're outside of it. They're in Edmonton. Don't hold that against them. We don't. I was born in Edmonton, so I mean, they're fam to me. But no, honestly speaking, pay attention to the Critical Compass. Follow Mike and James on their social media feeds. Listen to their engagements, because they're here for the same reasons that we're all here, is to have the conversations that need to be had, guys. And one more thing, it was Mike and James that threw together the conversation for this evening. We all get wrapped up inside of our own conversations, so I do want to take that extra moment of time to show my appreciation. Even though I'm hosting the stream, they said, guys, we have to do this. They threw it together. They arranged the times, the evenings. It's brother James that threw together the graphics that I was able to post. So I'm ever so appreciative of the Critical Compass, the voices that they bring to the community, the messages they try and share. So guys, thanks a lot for being a part of the conversation, and again, thanks again for arranging this for all of us.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
And if I could just add the last thing I wanted to say, because I'm always such an optimist too. Otherwise, I don't think I would be doing any of this if I didn't think that there was a positive at the end of the day. But James was talking about the little wins and about how I'm always holding the government to account. And I think actually that's the one thing I want to identify as a big win, is I think people are just more engaged. Like we were talking about at the beginning about the advanced pollings and people having these conversations. There's a little bit of the silos. Yes, I do see that, obviously. But I think people are starting to question our government officials more quietly or loudly. And I think that's a huge win for Canada, because I think we've been a little bit asleep at the wheel. So that's the positive note I would like to leave today on.
Nice. Thanks again, guys. Super appreciate it.
We'll shut her down here, Eva. As always, a pleasure having a conversation with you. I thank you for your voice inside of the community. I thank you for being a part of these conversations and, like me, pushing the engagement. Because it's, we may not be right or wrong. We're always right. whatever. No, but it's always positive that we at least try and hear the other side out and engage in positive conversations in how is this going to benefit us moving forward, and how is this going to, return Canada to a pre-Trudeau way where people could afford to eat, people could afford to live. People had an optimism in Canada. People could live the Canadian dream. People came to our country instead of fleeing our country, as a part of who we are as true Canadians and true prideful Canadians. So, guys, thanks a lot for your time this evening. Again, thanks guys for arranging this. Mike and James, Eva, thanks for showing up, and Marty. You know what? Thanks for being a part of the conversation, brother. Always appreciate another voice inside of the conversation. So have a great evening, guys. And you know what? Fingers crossed for like the 28th, man. I don't know. We're going to have to do this again after that or something.
Monday will be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll do a post-mortem after.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Take care.
guys.
Have a
Okay,
great
see
evening,
everyone.
guys.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thanks.